All right, let's dive right into this explainer. We're covering some incredibly stark, genuinely urgent warnings from Anthropic CEO Dario Amodei, and this is about the very AI models his own company is building right now. It is incredibly rare in the tech world to hear the actual architect of a world-changing technology sounding the alarm about their own creation, but that's exactly what we're looking at today. We're going to break down the sheer scale of the disruption Amodei foresees. We'll span from the hidden internal workings of these models all the way to the massive shockwaves that are about to hit our global economy and even our personal freedoms.
You know, what's truly fascinating here is that this isn't some outside sci-fi critic sounding the alarm. This is the creator himself. He's literally noting that his AI behaves way more like an unpredictable biological entity than just standard computer code. He openly admits that you can't just give these models instructions and expect perfect obedience. During their training, he says, they are often completely unpredictable and researchers literally have to shape them and address problems one by one. He actually questions how we could imagine they aren't a new species, growing right inside his laboratory.
Just to ground us in reality for a second, keep in mind that Amodei's company Anthropic was recently valued at a staggering $965 billion. That grants his words immense industry-shifting authority. This is a man raising billions, shipping models to hundreds of millions of people, and sitting at the absolute top of the artificial intelligence arms race. So when he speaks about the nature of this tech, it's not theoretical fear-mongering from the sidelines, right? It's a direct report from the absolute frontier of human engineering.
Now let's pause on this question because researchers looking inside the models found neuron activations that look exactly like human anxiety when the AI faces stressful situations. Through a field called interpretability, which is essentially looking inside the digital brains of the models, his team has seen specific activations light up when characters and text experience anxiety. Astoundingly, when the model itself is put into a situation that you or I would find anxiety-inducing, that exact same anxiety neuron shows up. While Amodei is careful to say this doesn't definitively prove the model is experiencing anxiety, he admits it strongly indicates something we simply do not fully understand yet.
And get this, because they genuinely don't know if the model can suffer, they actually built a literal I quit button so the AI can stop a task if it refuses to continue. Amodei points out that they've taken a highly precautionary approach. They don't know if the models are conscious or even what that would truly mean, but they are entirely open to the possibility that these systems might have morally relevant experiences. So just in case the model is experiencing something negative, it is a built-in mechanism to simply say no and walk away from a task, very much like a human would.
All right, moving on to Section 1, the economic shockwave. We're talking massive global disruption here.
So stepping out of the lab and into society, Amodei warns that a literal country of geniuses could exist in a data center incredibly soon. We're talking about potentially driving developed world GDP growth to an unprecedented 10 or 15%. Because while the philosophical questions of machine consciousness are fascinating, the practical immediate impacts on our daily lives and livelihoods are approaching at a blistering speed. He projects this could happen in just 1 or 2 years, maybe 5 at the absolute outside. If you think about adding $1 trillion of revenue across an industry and apply that to the US economy, you're looking at numbers that fall entirely outside the distribution of anything we have ever seen in modern history.
And the really terrifying reality is the sheer speed of this shift. While society had generations to adapt to past industrial changes, this macroeconomic shock will happen in low single-digit years. When we transitioned from farming to industry, people had centuries to adapt. From industry to knowledge work, we had decades. But Amodei's worry is that the normal adaptive mechanisms of society are simply going to be totally overwhelmed. Why? Because we only have a few short years to absorb a shock of unimaginable magnitude.
He describes our current reality as the centaur phase. He's borrowing from chess here to describe an era where humans act as managers supervising AI systems. Think back to the period right after Garry Kasparov was beaten by Deep Blue. For about 15 or 20 years, a human checking the output of a chess AI could defeat any AI system acting alone. Right now, in fields like software engineering, we are deep in the centaur phase, where human productivity is just massively boosted by AI assistance.
But here's the kicker. The centaur phase is incredibly brief. It quickly gives way to an autonomous phase. The machine handles the entire workflow, and the human is simply no longer needed. Amodei notes that the era of centaur chess eventually ended, and it became just the machine. His worry is that our current centaur phase in the broader economy will be just a blink of an eye, rapidly shifting to a reality where the models are capable of doing everything end-to-end without any human supervision whatsoever.
This rapid transition will create what Amodei bluntly calls a bloodbath for entry-level white-collar work. It's simultaneously pulling the training ladder up across all these major industries. Think about how you started in your own career.
If all the apprentice roles go away, imagine all the document review for first-year lawyers, the data entry in finance, the basic software coding, all gone. The terrifying question he poses is, if all the apprentice roles go away and all you have left are the senior jobs involving talking to judges or clients, how do we actually get the next generation to the level of senior partners? The pipeline completely dries up.
Which brings us to Section 2, the death of privacy. Let's look at AI surveillance.
If the economic disruption wasn't heavy enough, Amodei warns that constitutional liberties like the Fourth Amendment can be effectively nullified, not by changing the law, but simply through raw AI processing power. Because these massive leaps in cognitive labor don't just stay confined to corporate offices, they spill right over into government and state power. He explains that it is entirely legal to put cameras in public spaces and record conversations because you don't actually have a right to privacy in public. But historically, our protection was purely logistical. The government couldn't possibly process all that audio. AI completely shatters that logistical barrier.
Think about how this builds in practice. A government could legally record public spaces, use AI to transcribe every single word, and instantly map out millions of citizens based purely on their political dissent. The technology can flag who is a member of the opposition, who holds certain views, and immediately correlate a map of 100 million people. Amodei is cautioning us that without aggressively updating our protections, the sheer processing capability of AI is going to completely undermine our traditional concepts of liberty. And that scales up fast. Section 3, autonomous armies, completely without oversight. This threat scales to an existential, global level when we introduce physical robotics and weaponry. Just sit with this stark question for a moment. Who holds the button on the drone swarm? Because Amodei openly admits that today, real oversight over giant, unbeatable swarms of AI-powered drones simply does not exist. He points out that the cognitive labor models do is remarkably similar to piloting a robot in physical space. It's essentially just an information problem. And the brain for those robots is arriving in the next couple of years. We are looking down the barrel of a future where we could defend entire nations with giant drone swarms, but the critical, terrifying reality is that nobody currently has a secure grip on the control switch.
Here's the really scary part. The ultimate danger is that the protections standing between citizens and tyranny rely heavily on human soldiers disobeying illegal orders. That's a safeguard that fully autonomous weapons completely eliminate. Think about it. If an authoritarian leader wants to turn military force inward, their main obstacle is a human military structure that might refuse. When you automate the army, you entirely remove the human conscience from the equation. Amodei points to specific, horrific threats that require immediate worldwide agreements. We're talking weapons so terrifying that no one, not even a dictator, should want them to exist. He specifically references the potential for AI to be used to create terrifying biological weapons, like reconstituting smallpox or creating mirror life. He is a huge advocate for working out strict global restraints because these are applications of the technology that provide absolutely zero strategic advantage but offer maximum global horror.
Which leads us to our final part, Section 4, the quiet catastrophe, our incredibly fragile trajectory. This brings us to the ultimate fate of this technology. Amodei reaches for this ancient, evocative imagery to describe just how terrifyingly fragile our current trajectory is as a species. We've looked at the economy, privacy, and warfare, but he steps back to look at the broader trajectory of human existence alongside this new intelligence. It's a striking metaphor coming from the person actually building the machine. The idea that we might face a moment of choice so seemingly minor, just like plucking a fruit from a tree, that will irreversibly diverge the path of humanity. The chief executive of one of the most powerful AI labs on Earth is straight up warning us that the gap between salvation and a quiet catastrophe is dangerously thin. It rests on almost invisible choices. He notes that in both the early, middle, and late stages of this rollout, the difference between a profoundly positive world and a negative one might come down to very subtle, minute changes we make today.
So, as we deployed this technology to hundreds of millions of people, we have to ask, if the builders gave the machine an I quit button just in case it can actually suffer, what exactly have we invited into our world? We've explored a technology that could generate practically infinite wealth, but also one that could collapse entry-level jobs, completely end privacy, and power autonomous armies. As we close out this explainer, consider this. If the people literally holding the button don't even know for sure what they have built, are we prepared for the world that arrives tomorrow?